Welcome back to the Sad Boy Cinema Club podcast. My name is Austin. His name is AJ. Join us as you try to find purpose and hope in America's true pastime, watching some good old-fashioned movies. You see the title? You see the thumbnail. Today, we are talking about the 2003 film, Timeline, directed by Richard Donner. Screenplay by Jeff McGuire and George Nolfi? Starring Paul Walker, Francis O'Connor, Gerard Butler, Billy Connolly, and then the guy behind the camera, the cinematographer, is Caleb Deschanel, which I just learned literal minutes ago is Zoe Deschanel's father. Small world. Didn't know that she was a Nepo baby.
I mean, that's not a real common last name, so it just kind of figures.
Yeah, that's literally what. That's literally my line of thought. I went, huh, they've got to be related, and then scrolling through. That's her dad. Had no idea that she was a Nepo baby. Small world, after all. This was your movie. You're the one that brought this to the table. And last week when we talked, I was a little disappointed that you put me back into To Be Hell. But after you gave me a little brief synopsis, I was mildly intrigued, which I cannot say has been a theme for your movies on Tubi. So why don't you explain to me how you came to this conclusion while we're watching Timeline today and talking about it?
One, I just love to just give you hell. So that's anytime I can do that by suggesting a Tubi movie, perfect. But this one, it's kind of one of those things like Tootsie Roll Pops. You know, how many licks to get to the center? This was something that the more I licked it, the more intrigued I was. Obviously, starting out, it's got Gerard Butler, who just chef's kiss. He's my hall pass. But then also too, like, this was written and based off the novel by Michael Crichton. I'm sure you've seen a lot of his movies. Are you familiar with that name?
Not by name, but given this sort of kind of movie, I would have to imagine that you're correct, that I have seen a lot of his movies.
All right, I'm going to name I'm going to give it a rundown based off books that he wrote. And you tell me which ones you've seen. The Andromeda Strain, Pursuit, The Carey Treatment, The Terminal Man, The Great Train Robbery, Jurassic Park, Rising Sun, Disclosure, Congo, The Lost World, Jurassic Park, Sphere, The 13th Warrior, Jurassic Park 3, Timeline.
Including Timeline, 9. So, yeah. I've very familiar, but had no idea.
So, another thing that I found that was just hilarious about this movie was the fact that this was the last movie that he allowed to get licensed so they could make a movie for it, because he fucking hated this movie. There was so much change between this movie and the book. Like, he was just like, no, never again. So I thought that was hilarious. Like, he just wanted this movie to be made, and he even offered it for free, and just to get paid on the back end for the movie. And then by the time the movie was made and shot and everything, he fucking hated it and just was like, all right, never again. So I thought that was hilarious.
Well, I guess there's no time like the present. Go ahead and get us started. Let's talk about this movie.
All right. So this film begins with a man that's being chased through a forest by a knight. The man escapes at the last moment after he's been hit with a sword. So I guess he didn't really escape. But then all of a sudden he is in a desert. And we don't know where it is, but we can assume it's America because we see, a car with a license plate that looks like it might be New Mexico or maybe a California license plate.
I assume that every movie is in
America.
In America, yeah.
That's the superiority complex you got there, huh? You're the greatest.
USA.
The man kind of teleports back into the desert, and his dying word is Castle Guard. The guy that stopped to help him, good on him, but like, if I'm driving down the road in the middle of the desert and I see a guy dressed funny and covered in blood, I'm not stopping. Are you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Good job.
I am.
You are a model citizen, I guess. So while at the hospital, the physicians discover that this mystery man is wearing a strange pendant that says property of ITC Core. The physicians also notice his body is fucked up. The x-rays and the MRI and all the imaging is kind of just fucked. Like, it's all off kilter. Nothing lines up right. So after the physicians, pronounce the guy dead, and they've gone through all of his possessions and everything. The company ITC sends their cleaner, which is Frank Gordon, and they send him in to obtain the mystery man's body and medical records. So you know automatically if a corporation sends somebody in to retrieve the body and be like, okay, I need everything about this man that you know. Like, you know, some nefarious shit's happening.
Seems all above board to me, Chief. Gotta be honest.
Archaeologist Professor Edward Johnson, played by Sir Billy Connolly, and his students Kate Erickson, Josh Stern, Francois Dantel, and Andre Merrick have been sponsored by the mysterious ITC Corps to excavate the ruins of a village of Castlegar in France near Laroque Castle. The village was burned in the 1357 during the Hundred Years' War as part of a massive battle. What culminated and made sure that the French won that battle was the hanging of Lady Claire, who is played by Anna Friel, who is the sister of Arnaud de Cerebol, which, like I said, her death inspired the French, like it whipped them into a frenzy. The British, their plan was to use that kind of like a demoralizing factor, kind of like the backfire of the Joan of Arc situation. After we get introduced to all of the members of the archaeological team, we meet your man, Chris, played by Paul Walker, who is Professor Johnson's son. He has a huge crush on Kate and really honestly could care less about the past. So one of the funnier moments is when Professor Johnson is talking to his son Chris, and he's telling him all the ways that it'll never work out between him and Kate, and that, you know, he should just go back to his regular life. He just comes around when and sticks around till he gets bored, but because Kate's there, he's sticking around a lot longer, and he tells him, you know, hey, this will never work between you and her. And Chris says, well, I'm nothing like you, Dad, so I'll make it work. And he's like, no, the reason it won't work is because Kate's like me. You'll never come first. Fossils first. And I thought that was kind of funny. But another thing that Chris deals with, another way that they highlight that Chris is bored out of his mind and just hates the past, hates history, is there's this conversation that he has with Merrick, who's played by Gerard Butler, who Chris rides up on his motorcycle, and they have this big conversation about how the past is boring and yada, yada, yada. And Merrick takes him and shows him a sarcophagus of a French knight and a noblewoman. We don't know who these people are, but Merrick is quick to point out, hey, this guy's missing an ear. You know, he's here with a woman that he presumably loves, and they're holding hands. And this is something that we don't really see, especially, I guess I kind of associate sarcophaguses with only mummies and ancient Egyptians, but I guess there are other sarcophagus. So that's, I guess, on me.
It's sarcophagi, actually. But yeah, that I also just associate them with ancient Egypt. Something I love like immediately about this movie, and really any movie that takes place or is filmed during like 10 to 15 years before everybody pops up as far as their stardom level goes, because Paul Walker was already in Fast and the Furious at this point, but I would say that was at that point still like a cult classic kind of movie. He hasn't really like hit mainstream popularity yet. Gerard Butler is kind of in the same situation. He's just kind of cast as this like side character for all intents and purposes before he blows up. And there are a ton of other actors like this. Like this movie, because of how popular they got, couldn't have happened in 2008. You know what I mean? It could have only happened in this one particular year when everybody was under budget and you could all put this kind of talent together. Also, I very much do love Frank Gordon, played by Neil McDonough. He has been one of the best villains in all of TV and all of film, as far as I'm concerned. He was in the Walking Tall movie with The Rock. He was in Arrow. He was part of the CW verse for DC that I very much love. I love Neil McDonough. My favorite thing, though, it's not going to be my favorite thing toward the end, but one of my favorite things early on, Gerard Butler speaking in the Scottish accent. He sounds so much like Joe Hendry that I couldn't think of anything else the entire movie. I forget what line he actually said, but Joe Hendry has said something very similar. And for those who have no idea who I'm talking about, Joe Hendry is a professional wrestler who currently works for the WWE, and he's Scottish as well. He says the line the exact same way that I've heard Joe Hendry say it, and then the entire rest of the movie, I just thought of Joe Hendry, and I love Joe Hendry, so that was a nice little added bonus for me.
Professor Johnson it has become leery though, because they are digging up the past is expensive, and there's not a lot of money to be made. They're not looking for treasures or anything like that. So he has become leery because all of the leads that ITC have given or has given his team of archaeologists have really paid off. And so he decides he's going to go from France and go back and visit the owner of ITC, Robert Doneger, played by David Thewlis. Is that Lupin from Harry Potter?
It is Lupin. That's a
Okay.
note that I have. It's Lupin from Harry Potter.
That's what I thought, but I was like, I'm not going to look it up. He knows. He goes back. I don't think it ever tells us what ITC stands for, does it? I can't recall in the movie.
I don't either. Let's come up with an acronym right now.
I think ITC would be Interdimensional Time Cops.
So you think this is a law enforcement thing?
They do have Marines, so they do have mercenaries.
I'm gonna have to retroactively change my letterbox score if this is a cop movie all of a sudden. So
with Professor Johnson back in New Mexico to see Robert Doneger to kind of set things straight and be, let him know a piece of his mind about how the hell does he know what he knows? Because there's just no humanly way he could be that right or that lucky all the time. After Johnston leaves, the team makes a startling discovery. I don't know if there was an earthquake or what happened, but there was a cave that opens up into an unexplored tunnel after a collapse, and they discover Kate and Merrick discover a bifocal lens and a 600-year-old signature calling for help from none other than Professor Johnson. The team is diligent, and they confirm that not only do the glasses match a spare pair that Johnston left at base camp, but also the signature, they match it based off of what Chris can confirm, as well as they carbonated it, and they ended up doing that actually twice. So I thought that was kind of cool. But again, there are some flaws with this movie, and this just adds to it.
It is without a doubt a flawed movie. I don't want to say that the flaws make the movie more endearing, but at least they are consistent with their inconsistencies, if that makes sense.
Yeah, across the board, they don't correct them. There's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. The team contacts ITC president Doneger and the vice president, Stephen Kramer, and they all fly off to New Mexico. Upon arrival, it's explained that the company has been able to successfully manipulate a wormhole and can send people and objects back to a fixed point in history, Castleguard in 1357. They sent Professor Johnson days before. So the thing that I thought was kind of cool was how they were able to determine where this was sent based off of, they figured out, well, because originally they were sending it out straight, the camera straight, and all they saw was a wooded area. That could literally be anywhere. So, but then they got the bright idea to point the camera up to face the stars. And I thought that was really interesting and a really neat way for them to kind of get you locked into this position of, okay, this is exactly where they're at based off the map of the stars. I thought that was well done. ITC sends a rescue team consisting of a very reluctant Frank Gordon, plus two other of his Marines, which Frank tried to get out of going even, and only sending these two, hired guns, saying that they're the best men he's got, yada, yada, yada. But nonetheless, Frank ends up going. Chris, Kate, Andre, and Francois, which is their French translator, go back in time to rescue Professor Johnston. They go over the rules about how you must look the part, so Francois has to leave his glasses, and there's no modern clothes, and they definitely point out the fact, hey, no modern weapons. They go over, the necklaces they wear, how they're beacons, and the power that's behind them. And just the basics of how they work. Only one member of the archaeologist team stays behind, and that's Josh Stern, played by Ethan Embry. The trip back in time is off to a shitty start. They emerge in a roaring river, and once they do make landfall, they're immediately chased and attacked by English soldiers. The English make quick work of the first Marine, cutting him down before he could even do anything. Although I don't know what you would really do against a mounted knight. And then the other one is shot several times by a bow and arrow. And as he is dying, after the third arrow hits, he activates his beacon and is zapped back to present day, which we then learn he broke the cardinal rule and had a grenade. So once he came back into modern times, he blew up the machine in the laboratory. Josh and the VP of ITC begin working immediately to repair the machine to bring the group home, while Doniger has other ideas. And you can even see the turmoil between the president and the vice president about what they want to do with this group. The VP is very conflicted, and it looks like the president is only concerned about the profits, only concerned about, the media stories that will come up if these people return. So he's hell-bent on just erasing these people altogether.
That doesn't seem like what a CEO or a president would do. That doesn't track at all.
That's why it's a movie. The team in France eventually does get captured, and it really doesn't take too long for them to get captured. And they're immediately taken to Lord Oliver, who is with the English army. And once they were captured, Lord Oliver recognizes that Francois is French, and because the English and French are fighting a war, he gets him to confess to being a spy by having him translate a statement that just says, "I am a spy," and then he immediately kills him. And the rest of the team gets imprisoned while they're being held captive, though, in the same building as their friend was just murdered in. They realize they are being held with Professor Johnson and Lady Claire. Kate helps the team escape, with Merrick staying behind to free Lady Claire. They barely escape after a run-in with a knight named Sir William de Kerr. They're quickly recaptured by Sir William de Kerr, who we learn is a former ITC employee named William Decker, who explains that the machine fucks up your body with each trip back and is the reason he has decided to stay. Frank Gordon is quickly killed by Decker because Decker knows that Frank was sent back to kill him. He knows that he knows that he can't go back, and that's something that they would never explain to the archaeologists that were coming to get Professor, is this machine alters your body, like it's just fucky. And the remaining archaeologists are warned that their lives depend on how well Decker is received by Lord Oliver. Professor Johnson was spared originally because he agreed to make Greek fire for the English, which would totally rewrite history. In the final battle, we see the English unleash Greek fire with devastating results. Although after they saw it worked so well, like they only really took out one trebuchet. So I guess, limited results. The French continue their assault on the castle. Lord Oliver has Lady Claire. She's been captured again, and he's going to use her as a human shield and hopes that her brother will stop the attack and spare her life. Merrick once again saves the day by threatening to blow up the tower that is housing all of the Greek fire that Professor Johnson has made. And after he saves Lady Claire, he does lose an ear in the process, and the French army are able to win the battle. How Merrick loses the ear is he gets in a final bad guy battle against Sir Decker, and he gets his ear chopped off, but he kills Decker. So that was all she wrote for Decker. Going back to the beacons, they only have a 6-hour life, and after that time expires, they're just stuck. Merrick decides to stay behind with Lady Claire, and Chris, Kate, and Professor Johnson activate their beacons at the last moment. In present day, Doniger is trying to destroy the machine to stop the team's return, but he gets caught inside the machine as the team returns, instantly transporting him to the battlefield at Castle Guard, where he is killed. I don't know, did you notice in that shot how that bug flew right by his head in that final shot?
No, I did not see it.
I saw that and I was like, because it looked like they slowed down time, and I don't know if that was intentional or that was just the only shot that they were like, yeah, this works for us, let's go with it. So I'd love to know the reasoning behind that, if there is one.
Why don't we just ask Gerard Butler to come on the show,
You
and
know
we'll just
what?
ask him ourselves.
You gotta shoot your shot. Don't think I won't hit him up
Was
on.
that bug
He
there on
seems like a
purpose? And
Facebook.
also, can I kiss you?
Either or. If you don't know, that's fine. Back in modern day now, the team of archaeologists are still excavating the remains of Castleguard. They re-examine the sarcophagus of the anonymous knight and his lady, and lo and behold, when you look at it now, it reads, "Here lies Sir Merrick and Lady Claire," and we learn that they had 3 kids: Christophe, Catherine, and Francois. And it says they had a full and joyous life together, and then Merrick dies in 1382. And that's the end of the movie. Did you like it?
Yeah, I didn't expect to like it, if I'm being completely honest, mostly because it's a movie that you picked on Tubi. What I will say is that I didn't start to like this movie until probably about the halfway mark. And for those who didn't watch it or just listening to us talk about the movie, it's almost a 2 hour runtime. And we recapped it in about 25 ish minutes. The reason that that's even possible is because there is a huge amount of this movie that is just the battle scenes. And at the point that the movie stopped becoming a sci-fi adventure with the wormhole technology and became a medieval epic, that's when I was bought in. I do like that they're connected. I like that this is a weird kind of an oxymoron kind of genre connection. But at the point that you started acting more like Lord of the Rings, I was bought in for sure. So it took about an hour, but I did enjoy the movie.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. Like I said, I picked it in the beginning. I picked it because of Gerard Butler. I'm glad I did. I really enjoyed this one, and I thought the story was entertaining. It's a time travel movie, so like they've been done 1,000 times, but I feel like this was done very well, and I think you're absolutely hit it spot on with once it stopped trying to be, you know, just a sci-fi travel space travel movie and really leaned into the epic of it all. I think that really saved the whole movie. What was your favorite thing in this movie?
Part of me wants to say the end of the movie, not like when the credits rolled, but like where Merrick stayed behind and then it was actually him that was in the sarcophagus and he got his girl. Like I actually do like that a lot. And for whatever reason, I just never picked up on how that could have been a possibility up until the point that his ear gets cut off and went, oh, it's him. That's who we're talking about at the beginning of the movie. Okay. I want to say that, but really, the true answer is the musical score in this movie. Again, a lot of the film is the battle sequences, and there is a lot of great, great music in the musical score. It reminds me a lot of Lord of the Rings. Brian Tyler and Jerry Goldsmith did an absolutely incredible job in this, and I don't really take that lightly. You know, we've talked about a couple of movies so far on our journey here. I love the soundtrack, but I am just as big of a sucker for a musical score, and this one did it for me.
My favorite thing, be easy to say, Gerard Butler. And I already talked about how the story was interesting, but I really enjoyed the battle scenes. I thought they were nicely shot. I thought, it still felt all encompassing, but also it didn't feel too big that it was hard to focus on certain things. Like, it did a good job of drawing your eye right to the action, like right where it needed to be. Would you rewatch this?
I don't think that I would rewatch it, not for like any sort of disdain of the movie. I just don't think that I could get something additional out of it for a second or third rewatch. I much like Fargo, I think that this doesn't have a lot of rewatchability factor for it. I think it's a one time put it on the shelf kind of movie for me.
I swear to God, it's like we share a brain sometimes. I said I probably wouldn't watch it either. I did enjoy it, like you said, but much like Fargo, like we talked about Fargo, there's just not, once you kind of know how this movie ends, you're kind of like, oh, okay, well, I don't need to rewatch this. And it's not because it was a bad movie, because I really thoroughly enjoyed it. So we've talked about our favorite things. What's your least favorite thing, and what would you change?
I hate that this is my answer, but my least favorite thing is Paul Walker's acting. I don't I don't want to sit here and pretend like I have ever accused Paul Walker of being an Oscar worthy actor, because that has never happened. Maybe I'm watching it through, rose tinted glasses. I feel like he's better than this though. No, I feel like he is just a better actor than what we got. And there are some like narrative things that bother me that I'm going to get to in just a second for what I would change. But he just doesn't care. Like at the very beginning of the movie, he is told that his father, who he obviously has a very close relationship with, you can see it through the rapport, that he's disappeared and he's in the year 1357. And he goes, "Oh,
Mm.
what do you mean?
But where's
Oh,
Kate?
like I just I feel like, again, respectfully, he's no longer with us. I love the Fast and Furious movies. I feel like you could have picked any other dreamy, blonde hair, blue eyed actor in the early 2000s, and they would have done as good of a job or better than Paul Walker. Again, I feel at some point like he picks it up, but it wasn't in 2003, and this movie is evidence of that.
I think that Paul Walker maybe he's a method actor for this movie, and that was supposed because his dad tells him, "Hey, you usually get bored here after about 1 or 2 weeks, and you've been here longer than that." So maybe he was just really that he keyed in on that. Okay, I've got to be bored. I've got to look like I want to be anywhere else but here.
The thing that I would change also sort of it very much has to do with Paul Walker, but also just like different character choices that didn't make any sense to me. The professor loves Kate, and she's a perfectly fine character, and she has redeeming qualities to why you would like a character like that. Your literal son is on the same archaeological trip with you, and you were just like, Kate, 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 because when they get captured and they're all in the same holding spot, he like embraces her as if he thought he was never going to see her again. And his son, who is literally injured and has blood over him, he's just like, "Oh, hey, buddy, what's up? It's your son. Act like it." And then, of course, I already talked about how I think Paul Walker needs to act like he cares that his dad has gone back in time 600 years and you may never see him again, but whatever. There's a lot of weird character quirks that I feel, I don't want to say tainted the movie, because realistically I don't think that if they had changed their ways that this would be a 5-star movie for me. They bothered me though, and I wonder what the screenwriter felt also, because I haven't read this book. I'm kind of curious to read it now though, because I want to see what was changed and what pissed him off so bad, because I feel like we would be on the same page for a lot of it.
So I know one example was Doniger. He's kind of portrayed as a piece of shit in this movie, but they kind of tiptoe around it. But in the book, he's like super super asshole. And then also too, I know another example was the beacons. There were specific beacons, or so in the book they could be sent to different times. Like it wasn't just a locked in point on 1357 at the Battle of Castleguard. So there were certain places that you could be sent where you would be killed or like just disappeared for troublesome employees. So I thought that was kind of cool, and I wish they would have played with that a little bit more. But yeah, I would definitely go back and like to read this book and see the difference. For me, my least favorite things in this movie are the unexplained plot holes, not potholes.
Those damn potholes too, though.
So every time traveling movie, and even ones that aren't like super sci-fi-ish, like if you think about like the butterfly effect and stuff like that, if anything has changed, that alters the course of history. Merrick talks about it at one point when he thinks he saved Lady Claire and he's going to spare her the first time, and he's like, it doesn't matter. But then Kate questions history because she killed a man. Chris kills a guy. The English get Greek fire for a little bit. Like there's so many things that they do in this little romp back to 1357 that are just never explained, other than the fact that Merrick ends up being the French knight. But what's weird is, so you in the beginning of the movie you see Merrick looking at the sarcophagus. He goes back in time. Obviously he doesn't go back to modern time, so now he's back in time as Merrick, a knight, and so like that just kind of really did not do a good job of explaining like the fact that history was fluid and that it could change like that. So I thought there should have been more repercussions. Like I would have loved to have seen, like, maybe don't kill one of those Marines in the beginning of the movie, And when Kate kills that soldier, that Marine just disappears. Like, I think something like that, hey, if this guy gets killed, well, maybe this person isn't born. I think that would have been cool to kind of play with.
So I think I have something that actually can help you understand that a little better. And it's actually going to be a reference that I'm fairly certain you will completely understand, because usually when I would do this, I would talk about the Flash, and I know that you haven't seen that or read the comics or do anything cool. One of the scientists made it a very clear point to say that this is not a time travel device, that they are manipulating a wormhole. Think of time as a line, straight line. We are here on this line. Here is 1357. It isn't time travel, because if time travel existed, time travel would always have existed. Because this is an exploit to a wormhole, things do not progress the same way. You are leaving 2002, 2003 to go back to that point. And while you are not necessarily influencing the events toward the future, you are impacting them because of your presence, because you jumped into the wormhole. Case in point, Merrick, when he goes back to 1357, if he were to come back in present day, he wouldn't have lost an ear. He lost an ear because he went back. For other examples, right? Think of Futurama. Philip J. Fry goes back in time, like 60-ish years before he's born, sleeps with a woman, and then he becomes his own grandfather because of this action. If he didn't go back in time to do that, his grandmother would not exist, or his great grandmother, I guess. His great grandmother wouldn't exist, which means that his grandfather wouldn't exist, which means that he wouldn't exist. So because he did this action, he now exists. So it's not time travel, and it's not the butterfly effect. It is just manipulating a wormhole.
Hypothetically, would you go back and fuck your great grandmother to make you?
Can't say I will. Don't know if you know this about me and the sad boys of the Cinema Club podcast. Not really enjoying life right now. So if I could avoid just ever doing this, I think I would.
You know what? I'll stay here. It's fine. You've heard us talk about it. What'd you give it on Letterboxd?
I gave it a very healthy, very respectable 3 out of 5. I feel like it did a good job, again, of ditching this sci-fi element to it halfway through, became a medieval epic, which is the strong suit of the film. And then toward the end, they just sprinkled back some of the sci-fi stuff, which instead of tainting the rest of the project was just like a nice garnish. So I think that was I do like this hodgepodge of these two genres, which I don't necessarily associate with each other. I also think that there aren't that many. I mean, there are a ton of comedy, like, rom-coms and action thrillers and like all these other things that make sense as far as genre conglomerations. Sci-fi medieval epics don't exactly go together, and I think even though that there are probably better examples of that thing, I feel like this is a really solid effort.
Yeah, so for me, I gave it a 3.5 stars, and this is a movie that you said it perfectly. They did a great job of marrying these two different genres that necessarily wouldn't be associated with each other. And I really enjoyed it. It's not gonna win any. I'm sure it didn't win any major awards, um, but it was definitely one that I enjoyed watching, and I'm glad I did. All right, so without further ado, what are we watching next week?
So this is a Sad Boy Cinema first, and it may actually never happen again. For the first time ever, we have two movies from the same platform. I am offering a Tubi classic, and I'm also tapping into a market that we've delved into once before, that being the world of professional wrestling. Next week, free on Tubi, we are going to be enjoying The Marine, starring John Cena. I haven't seen the movie since it came out. I was a big John Cena fan back in the day, and of course his feature film. I have to check it out. I haven't seen The Marine 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Haven't seen any of those. But it's been 20 years since I've seen the first one, and I figured it was time for a refresher.
I am beyond jazzed. I love wrestling and I love Tubi, so I'm over the moon.
So join us next week as we talk about The Marine. Follow us on all socials at Sad Boy Cinema here on YouTube, obviously, but also TikTok, Twitter, and our newly formed Facebook page. Also, follow our individual Letterboxd accounts. I'm going to put our handles above our head here. And if you don't have anything, I'll send us out of here.
Oh, I've got something. Listen, don't sharpen your pitchforks and don't get your torches too hot. But Obsession is a terrible movie, and I stand by that.
And this is the last episode of the Sad Boy Cinema Club. That's going to do it for me. That's going to do it for AJ. Be kind. Tell somebody you love them. See you next one.